You're listening to the Sisters in Loss podcast, a faith-based podcast that spotlights Black women who replace silence with storytelling around pregnancy and infant loss and infertility. Black women experience miscarriage and stillbirth 4 to 5 times more likely than white women, according to the NIH and CDC. Whether you've experienced a miscarriage, infant loss, stillbirth, are trying to conceive, or have an infertility diagnosis, you will learn about resources and strategies to heal, gain clarity, peace, hope, and find an empowering path forward after loss. I'm your host, Erica M. McAfee, and you will hear me interview sisters in loss who have healed from such a painful and traumatic experience by sharing their testimonies and stories to inspire and help others turn their pain into their purpose. Now let's get started. You're listening to the Sisters in Loss podcast. Welcome to episode 285, and it is the new year, 2023. I am excited to record today's session. If you are watching here on YouTube, you can still see that I have my Christmas tree up. It's a few days after Christmas, and today's episode is a solo episode. I'm recapping 2022 and discussing the word of the year for 2023. So I'm excited to have this opportunity to share with you all. I only published one episode last year solo episode in 2022. You would go back and listen to episode 265. It was our 5-year anniversary recap episode where I kind of recapped the last 5 years of Sisters in Loss and how the podcast started, the original goal of the podcast, and then kind of where we are now and the vision for the next 5, 10, 20 years of this organization. So go back to that episode. Listen to it. It's 51 minutes of just me talking, sharing from the heart, and really sharing the vision of Sisters in Loss and where we are going to go. So if I would have to sum up 2022 as a whole, it would be 2022 was my caterpillar year. I asked God at the top of the year in 2022 that I was ready to be open to giving and receiving love in all forms. And God really over-delivered that for me. And I'm forever grateful. No, I'm still single. If you think I'm partnered, that is the reason why I'm saying this. But no, I think that when you're open to friendship, when you're open to receiving new people in your life, especially in our grown ages, it allows God to move and manifest in ways in your life that you may not have known that you needed, but you absolutely needed at the time. So love comes in all forms is what I've grown to recognize and realize here in 2022. And it was the biggest lesson that I've learned in this year. Last year is really what love looks like, from love from my friends, that platonic love that we have, open to what love looks like from men who are not like romantically tied to you. So developing friendships with folks who are already in your life, men that are already in my life, uncles, other male figures that have been in my life, and then being open to what love looks like from men that I may have dated, and then it just didn't work out and it turned into something platonic, and a friendship was developed from that. And I had the opportunity this year to really reflect, recharge, reacclimate to life post-divorce, working on projects in the background. I finished my master's in maternal child health systems, and really navigating what it means to grieve multiple journeys at once. If I am a testament to that, is you can live your life out loud and proud, but still be grieving multiple things at one time. If you're new here, I started Sisters in Loss back in 20 17 with the goal of growing my family in a non-traditional way, as I had experienced two losses, a maternal near miss, and I lost the ability to have more children by having a hysterectomy, C-section, emergency C-section to have my son. So I thought I was going to grow my family through gestational surrogacy, or even through adoption, whether it's foster to adoption and traditional adoption, or even an international adoption. Like, I was open to all forms of finding and growing and having another baby. But in 2022, I really had taken the time to grieve that my son may be the only child that I have. And naturally, really, obviously, and I may never parent a typical or normal child, as my son has cerebral palsy and is severely developmentally delayed. So that is something that I've had to reckon with, especially as he gets older and you see, your friends' kids, you see other children who are around his same age, moving and shaking and getting into sports and other, extracurricular things. And, they having full blown, conversations with their parents. And, I still grieve the fact that my son will probably never say mom, and never will have those opportunities. Even Christmas is still very difficult for me because, for a typical 8-year-old, they would be excited about Christmas and waking up and opening Christmas gifts. But I don't have that experience. So I try to glean from others, especially for those of you who post on social media of your kids during the holiday season. It's been a blessing, and it's cathartic for me to see other kids be excited about Christmas, because it's something that I have never experienced and probably will never experience with my child, right? Like, I'm not saying that I would not be partnered at one day again and maybe get married, and, that individual, that man may have children that are younger and will have that experience, or I'll be able to experience that with them. But just with my own my genetic child, my natural child that was born, I may not have that experience. And it's something that I've learned in 2022, how to grieve and how to cope with that, along with grieving to the 2 children that I lost, along with grieving not being partnered, not being married, going through a divorce, what the post-divorce looks like, what dating in 2022 looks like. So that has been a journey over this last year. And I've learned so much about myself. I learned so much about what I truly want and what my life's purpose is. And really, it centered me finding joy and finding peace and finding freedom and liberation within myself, and that I can truly be happy and at peace with just me. And to be on this journey took a lot of courage, took a lot of stepping out on faith, and it took a lot of introspection. Like, I really had to go deeper within myself to really find out really what makes me happy and really, really what I want ultimately out of life. And I am very proud of the woman that I've become over this last year. 2022 was my caterpillar year, and I accomplished so much in 2022. And at the top of the year, we had an article published with the BBC where I was able to be on the BBC live out of London. We had articles published on the BBC around miscarriage within Black women. And then they did a recording for us about how we are navigating through loss and miscarriage with myself and 4 other amazing women that shared their stories. And we were able to have a lot of footage posted by the BBC online, as well as through social media. So here's a snapshot of it. So Black infants are 2.3 times more likely to die before their first birthday compared to our white counterparts. And Black American parents experience higher rates of fetal and perinatal deaths. So over the last 5 years, I have produced a show called Sisters in Loss, a podcast where Black women and their partners have shared their journeys to motherhood. And many of them shared that they weren't listened to or weren't heard during their treatment, during pregnancy and post-loss, that led to them having more difficult grief and bereavement journeys. So what ended up happening, a lot of this boiled down to transgenerational trauma that really was associated with over 400 years of collective enslavement, poverty, discrimination in the educational system, in the judicial system, but more specifically in our healthcare system. So what we found in the research is that Black American parents really do encounter more specific barriers in receiving quality care. It could look like having some higher levels of medical mistrust that leads to the discrimination they're experiencing and just overall poor communication with their providers. However, there was not much known about how Black parents' perception about their impact with patient-provider relationships and their perinatal outcomes and their bereavement journey. So this study and this research really was aiming to really explore Black American mothers' experiences in pregnancy, loss, and bereavement in relation to the healthcare system, as well as their healthcare providers. So the specific aims of this research and this project really was to review the history and the role of our healthcare systems, as well as our healthcare providers in pregnancy and post-loss amongst Black American women, to also look at what the impact was of patient-provider relationships throughout pregnancy and post-loss, and really how Black American women cope with perinatal bereavement. How we went about this was to develop and administer focus groups, really to explore Black parental satisfaction, the perceived racial discrimination, and really any biases that could have been based on insurance status or social economic status. From there, we analyzed the focus group results and we made recommendations. The goal was to make recommendations for future improvement of patient-provider relationships in perinatal bereavement. So we went to the research, we went to the literature and really wanted to identify and really examine published articles that had already done research on healthcare providers and health systems in perinatal bereavement, really specifically among Black women. So we searched PubMed, or I searched PubMed, really without any restrictions. I really wanted to make sure that we looked at no language, no geography, really looking at articles from 2010 after. And we really looked at the key terms: perinatal loss, infant mortality, perinatal bereavement, patient-provider relationships, African-American, and pregnancy loss. And this search strategy resulted in less than 100 articles. So what the research showed is that Black American women really do experience fetal death at least twice those of any racial or ethnic group here in the United States. And no matter the gestational age of the loss, they still experience profound grief and mourning. Something else that the research showed was that perinatal loss and bereavement is very unique to African Americans, mainly due to the lack of sensitivity that they experience from healthcare providers in grieving their loss. The research also showed that Black birthers and partners really were seeking providers that had active listening skills, that had the ability to ask probing questions and really to explain any diagnoses they had in lay terminology. The research also showed that healthcare professionals' communication was painful, disconnected, and uncomfortable for certain individuals. And participants reported a lack of continuity of care and communication after they received a terminal diagnosis. And then lastly, when it came to maternal mental health, one study identified that there was a lack of grief support groups that really were acknowledged or really prioritized by healthcare providers and health systems after individuals received bereavement or grief diagnoses. It was good, right? I amazingly enjoyed all of the opportunities that came from that article. I also graduated with my master's. I really didn't go into detail on this in episode 265, but I wanted to make sure I shared more about that. I published my original thesis. It was called Are You Listening to Me? Black perinatal bereavement. And I presented the full thesis here on the podcast. If you would go back and listen to episode 276, Are You Listening to Black Women in Maternal Health? Here is a snapshot of my thesis presentation and my original research. So Black infants are 2.3 times more likely to die before their first birthday compared to our white counterparts. And Black American parents experience higher rates of fetal and perinatal deaths. So over the last 5 years, I have produced a show called Sisters in Loss, a podcast where Black women and their partners have shared their journeys to motherhood. And many of them shared that they weren't listened to or weren't heard during their treatment, during pregnancy and post-loss, that led to them having more difficult grief and bereavement journeys. So what ended up happening, a lot of this boiled down to transgenerational trauma that really was associated with over 400 years of collective enslavement, poverty, discrimination in the educational system, in the judicial system, but more specifically in our healthcare system. So what we found in the research is that Black American parents really do encounter more specific barriers in receiving quality care. It could look like having some higher levels of medical mistrust that leads to the discrimination they're experiencing and just overall poor communication with their providers. However, there was not much known about how Black parents' perception about their impact with patient-provider relationships and their perinatal outcomes and their bereavement journey. So this study and this research really was aiming to really explore Black American mothers' experiences in pregnancy, loss, and bereavement in relation to the healthcare system, as well as their healthcare providers. So the specific aims of this research and this project really was to review the history and the role of our healthcare systems, as well as our healthcare providers in pregnancy and post-loss amongst Black American women, to also look at what the impact was of patient-provider relationships throughout pregnancy and post-loss, and really how Black American women cope with perinatal bereavement. How we went about this was to develop and administer focus groups, really to explore Black parental satisfaction, the perceived racial discrimination, and really any biases that could have been based on insurance status or socioeconomic status. From there, we analyzed the focus group results and we made recommendations. The goal was to make recommendations for future improvements of patient-provider relationships in perinatal bereavement. So we went to the research, we went to the literature and really wanted to identify and really examine published articles that had already done research on healthcare providers and health systems in perinatal bereavement, really specifically among Black women. So we searched PubMed, or I searched PubMed, really without any restrictions. I really wanted to make sure that we looked at no language, no geography, really looking at articles from 2010 after. And we really looked at the key terms: perinatal loss, infant mortality, perinatal bereavement, patient-provider relationships, African-American, and pregnancy loss. And this search strategy resulted in less than 100 articles. So what the research showed is that Black American women really do experience fetal death at least twice those of any racial or ethnic group here in the United States. And no matter the gestational age of the loss, they still experience profound grief and mourning. Something else that the research showed was that that perinatal loss and bereavement is very unique to African Americans, mainly due to the lack of sensitivity that they experience from healthcare providers in grieving their loss. The research also showed that Black birthers and partners really were seeking providers that had active listening skills, that had the ability to ask probing questions and really to explain any diagnoses they had in lay terminology. The research also showed that healthcare professionals' communication was painful, disconnected, and uncomfortable for certain individuals. And participants reported a lack of continuity of care and communication after they received a terminal diagnosis. And then lastly, when it came to maternal mental health, one study identified that there was a lack of grief support groups that really were acknowledged or really prioritized by healthcare providers and health systems after individuals received bereavement or grief diagnoses. So I graduated back in June with my master's in maternal child health systems from Bastyr University, based out of Seattle, Washington. For those who are interested in any type of public health degree or master's in public health, there are many programs that are out there that focus on maternal health. And for me, I wanted to make sure I chose a program because I could have gone to any school, right? I wanted to make sure I chose a program that really focused on social justice and reproductive justice. And it was centered around those who are in a minority, because if we are focusing on those in the minority, we're going to help those who are in the majority. So I chose a program that was really centered and focused on social justice and reproductive justice and birthing justice, because I knew that I wanted to read stories about Black, Indigenous, and people of color in the United States, the research that was there, and how can we combat a lot of the systemic issues that we have that are faced within our healthcare system. And I didn't want the sugarcoating of it being whitewashed, in which a lot of these master's programs around public health do. So I chose to go to Bastyr, who focused on social justice, reproductive justice, birthing justice, and really focused on the minority communities so that we could help not only those who are marginalized, but when you help those, you help the majority. So I am very proud of being able to complete this master's thesis within 1 year, and all of the sacrifices it took to really focus on a master's program and to get it done in a year, especially when it's a 2-year program, was credited to my village around me, to the Sisters in Loss community for allowing me to step back and really focus on this. But those who also participated in my original research, I want to say I had over 50 people sign up for it, about 30 people who actually participated in it. I'm grateful for each and every one of you who participated in the research. And I really wanted to make sure that we were being listened to and heard in the healthcare system. So there's a lot of recommendations that came out of my original research, and I'm excited to move forward with that and presenting a lot of that in future keynotes and presentations that are go out to not only organizations, but those who are actually out there on the front lines that are doing this work. So very, very grateful to be able to accomplish that, because that's a huge accomplishment that I don't want to, brush by the wayside. Like it's huge to complete a master's degree, and I'm grateful that I had the opportunity to do so. Something else I did this year was travel. I traveled a lot. I think I traveled almost every month in 2022. The biggest travel 2 trips I went internationally was to Accra, going back to Ghana. If you all know, 2019 was the year of return, 400 years from when the first enslaved Africans were brought over to the United States. And I was going originally in 2020, was not able to go, obviously, because we're still in a pandemic. And we had the opportunity to go in April of 2022, which was a life-changing experience. I met amazing people on that trip, a couple of them that are still friends to this day that we have hung out all summer and then the fall and winter. And I'm so grateful for them. And I am most excited about just how I truly became came into myself, really understood about what my Ghanaian name was and how, a woman born on a Wednesday really what does that mean? And how much the diaspora is integrated in everything that we do, not only here in the US, but really around the world, and how Black women have shaped the world, literally birthed and shaped the world. So I'm excited. Had such an amazing experience there. Also went to Jamaica in December, and that was another life-changing experience of liberation and freedom that I didn't know I needed. So it was a great way to round out the year. And I rested this year. I took the summer off from podcasting. I came back in the fall strong. I ended the year strong with podcasting. I'm going to start off the year strong with podcasting. But I am excited to claim that 2023 is going to be my butterfly year. I was a caterpillar in 2022, and a lot of folks are probably like, Erica, you did a lot in 2022. I did, but I really feel like it was the seeds that were being sowed and planted and grounded, and now they're going to take root and they're going to grow in 2023. So I'm claiming 2023 to be my butterfly year, and my 2023 word of the year is blossom. To bloom where I've been planted. I'm sure you've heard that. And there's a Bible verse in Jeremiah 1:7-8 that says, "But blessed is the one who trusts in the Lord, whose confidence is in him. They will be like a tree planted by the water that sends out its roots into the stream. It does not fear when heat comes. Its leaves are always green. It has no worries in a year of drought and never fails to bear fruit." And I believe that we are all in the year of blossom, that we're going to bloom where we're planted, that these trees that are planted by rivers of water, that we have no fear of it bearing fruit based off of what we've planted. So I know that in 2023, that this community is going to continue to blossom. It's going to continue to bloom. It's going to continue to bear fruit for all of the seeds that have been planted. And we're going to harvest in our season. And this is our season, y'all. This is our season to reap the harvest of all that we've planted. For those of us who are seeking children in 2023, for those of us who are looking to grow our families in alternative ways, like through adoption, through surrogacy, for those of us who are just starting on this journey of maybe have experienced loss and want to try to conceive this year, for those of us who are just, tackling motherhood while grieving, still grieving the loss of your babies before, but still having to parent these living ones that God has blessed us with here on earth. 2023 is your year to blossom. Whatever that looks like for you. That could be growing your family. That could be starting a business. That could be writing a book. That could be starting that nonprofit organization that pours back into Black women and women of color. That could be becoming a doula and growing your doula business. 2023 is your year to blossom. And I'm excited to see all that God is going to do in your life in 2023. But I want to talk about what's happening in Sisters in Loss in 2023. We have two major things that are going on next year. I'm so excited about. We have our birth, bereavement, and postpartum doula training. We're going to do 4 live trainings this year. Our first training beginning February 5th, 2023. That's led by me. We also are going to have training throughout the rest of the year that are going to be led by other instructors. So I'm excited about offering this to the Sisters in Loss Training Institute and for you all to join in. So go to sistersinloss.com/courses to register for the February 5th training. It's a 4-week training. It's a condensed training, our condensed 8-week training into 4 weeks. And I know that you all want to become birth, bereavement, and postpartum doulas. It'll be trained by me directly. So I want you all to join in and become a birth, bereavement, and postpartum doula in 2023. We also have a major conference going on, y'all. You should see these caller proposals that will be coming out soon in your inbox to submit your workshop or your abstract. The Sisters in Loss Conference is coming to Washington, D.C. on October 6th and 7th. I am excited to share more information about the conference, about being a sponsor, about being an exhibitor, but also for those of you who want to present to our community to really talk about Black perinatal bereavement and really how to support Black women and people of color as they navigate it through pregnancy and infant loss, miscarriage, and infertility diagnoses. So how can you support Sisters in Loss in 2023? Listen to the podcast, sis. Rate, review, and subscribe to us. Share these episodes with everyone. Follow us on social media. We're very active on Instagram and Facebook in our Facebook community. Join our free Facebook group. And then we have grief support groups, guys. We have been blessed with a partnership with Postpartum Support International, and we're going to a weekly grief support group in 2023. How exciting is that? So every week you'll be guided and held space with a Sisters in Loss doula who will hold space for the community every week on Thursdays at 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. So if you all are interested in being a part of and want to jump in anytime on our weekly grief support group with Postpartum Support International, go to postpartum.net. Scroll down, look for Black Moms in Loss groups under the online support groups. And that is where you would sign up for us, our support group weekly. And I'll make sure I link this on our website, but also on our Instagram page. We also have a Sisters in Law support group as well. And that support group will also be launching back in February. It's a 6-week support group where we come together as a smaller community to talk about grief and loss as well in a different setting. So you all definitely go to sistersinloss.com/events and look for our grief support group there. And then lastly, our doula training. As I mentioned before, we're going to be doing doula training all year long. So our next session is on February 5th. It is for 4 weeks. It is a live training on how to become a birth, bereavement, and postpartum doula. Each training session is about 2 hours long. It'll be held every Sunday at 6 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, 3 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. So join us for our first session of the year to become a birth, bereavement, and postpartum doula, a full spectrum doula on February 5th, 2023 at 6 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Go to sistersinloss.com/course to get more information and to join us on this 4-week journey. So Sisters in Loss has a lot happening in the background, from our grief support groups to our conference to training doulas and training on how to navigate through loss at any stage. We also are going to launch abortion doula training. We're going to also launch for you to become a childbirth educator. We're also going to talk about systems around supporting birth work. And we are going to continue to publish podcast episodes weekly, sharing these stories on how we're going to continue to fight for Black moms and babies, and continue to break down these walls, break down these mantles, and continue to show up in these spaces so that we can be advocates and activists to Black perinatal bereavement, but also as a part of the birthing justice and reproductive justice movement. I am so honored to hold this space with you all. I hope that you all will continue to blossom in 2023 and more to come on Sisters in Loss. I won't let this be my only solo episode for 2023. We will come back and share more as we go throughout the year, as we get closer to the conference in October. But I'm excited about all that God is going to do in your lives this year. So sis, I want you to bloom. I want you to blossom. And I want you to flourish and do all that God has called and created you to do in 2023. That is all for today. I will talk to you all next week with another episode with an amazing guest. But this is all for now. You all have an amazing 2023. Love you to life. This is Erica Michelle signing out. Bye, everybody.
Thank you for listening to today's episode. For show notes, go to sistersinloss.com to stay connected with us and join the Sisters in Loss community and receive my weekly newsletter. Please go to sistersinloss.com/newsletter. That is sistersinloss.com/newsletter. Please rate and review this episode, and I will talk to you next week.